Hello, it's been a while since we've done a video, so I thought why not use the time to talk about cell transport and homeostasis. I want you to refocus your mind. So right now we've currently talked about cell organelles and their functions within a cell. Now we're going to just step back a little bit and talk about the cell membrane in a lot more detail. The reason why this is so important is because the regulation of things that come in and out of the cell is important to ensure that an organism can undergo daily life functions. Things like breathing, digestion, growing, all of those are life functions essential to the survival of an organism. But in order to do that, we have to have some kind of regulation system. And that's what the cell membrane does. It decides, yes, this molecule can come in, or no, this molecule can not come in. The reason why us as organisms can stay relatively healthy is because of this regulation. So we'll also relate the information or the role of the cell membrane to homeostasis, or how we keep a balance in the body. I want you to understand that we have trillions of cells in our bodies. However, those cells working together, each individual cell working on its own and working in a team, ensures the whole organism is healthy and able to survive. So please keep that in mind, that this regulation is happening trillions of times in your body, and it has to, because we have to make energy for our body. We'll talk about what it takes to make energy in a little bit of detail here, but we will spend a lot more time later on this year. Again, we're talking about the cell membrane and its role in the regulation of the body. We are going to spend a little bit of time talking about solutions before we can really move on into how this relates to a cell. So a solution is a physical mixture made up of multiple liquids. And the reason why that's important is because I want you to think of your cell as a solution, and what we allow to come in and out of the cell will determine how the solution is classified. So again, our body is made up of trillions of cells, so we can think of our body as a very large solution. And in order to maintain homeostasis, our bodies must move substances in and out of the cell. However, sometimes those substances can cause us to be either dehydrated or over dehydrated. I don't think that's a word, but I guess like with too much in our bodies, and we have to figure out a way to regulate this. For example, you can think of blood sugar in our body. In order to regulate our sugar in our blood, we have to have some kind of mechanism that regulates that. So we have cells to regulate everything that comes into our body. There are three words, or vocabulary words, that I really want you to become familiar with. The first one being isotonic. So you see it here in the middle. These cells, and this is a good picture because it demonstrates what cells look like in three different states. These cells kind of look perfectly round, and it's an equal distribution of solutes and solvents coming in and out of the cell. In class, we will talk about solutes and solvents, and I'll define those for you. So don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about. But what I want you to think about is a solute is like a product that can come in and out. And in an isotonic solution, the solutes and solvents in and out of the cells are equal. So we have an equal amount coming in and an equal amount going out for an isotonic cell. The second word, hypotonic, is where the amount is lower on one side than another. So the outside of the cell has a lower amount of solutes than inside the cell. And again, just think of solutes as like tiny little molecules at this point, and I'll give you examples in class. So what this is going to look like, this hypotonic cell, it's going to look really bloated, a really, really fat cell. And you can see that over here. I know this hypotonic cell kind of looks like it's not any bigger than the isotonic, but it actually is a bloated cell. I'll show you a real life replica of what a hypotonic cell looks like. It's pretty impressive to see how much a cell can actually hold. And then finally, the third word being hypertonic, where the amount of solute is higher on the opposite side than inside the cell. So outside of the cell has a higher amount of solutes than inside the cell. This cell is going to look a little more shriveled up. You can think of it more of as like a dehydrated cell. Depending on the solute will determine whether the cell is hypertonic, isotonic, or hypotonic. So please keep that in mind. These three words will be very important as we progress into our next lab, which will be coming up next week sometime. It's an egg lab, and we really just focus on how a cell can undergo how it regulates and undergoes different environments and can maintain homeostasis no matter the environment presented. Again, we're talking about the movement through the plasma membrane in and out of a cell. And there are two ways this can occur. One is called passive transport and the other is called active transport. These are really important words because as we progress through this process, we're going to learn how passive transport doesn't require any energy, but active transport does. And where do we even get that energy from? So this is where all this conversation of energy comes about, and that leads into our very next chapter. So all of the information flows together. So passive transport occurs when substances cross the plasma membrane without any input of energy. Again, energy is essential for our body, but we can't produce enough energy for everything. So our body has a very, very nice way of allowing some things to pass in and out of the cell that are really not much of a concern. So again, passive transport, no energy is required because we are moving from a high to low concentration. Meaning it's kind of like a ball rolling down a hill, going from high to low. So we don't really have to push the ball because the ball's rolling down the hill already. It's going with the flow of gravity. It's the same idea. Concentration, I'll define this word in class as well, but again, we're going from high to low concentration. So in passive transport, we do not require any energy. And there are different types we're going to talk about in class: simple diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated diffusion. I do have slides for each one of these, but to keep the video a little bit shorter because this is a longer video since I've combined information, I am going to skip over some of those slides. They're not that they're not important, but I'll spend a little more time in class talking about them than I am in this video. So like I mentioned, 3 different types of passive transport, the first one being simple diffusion, the second being osmosis, and the third being facilitated diffusion. Now, again, we have different ways of transporting things in and out of the cell. We talked about passive transport with the 3 examples. Now we're going to talk about active transport, and we do have several examples. The difference between active transport and passive transport is now active transport is where we are bringing things in and out of the cell from low concentration to high concentration. So if we use the example of the ball rolling down the hill, this would be like me pushing a ball up the hill instead of letting it roll down. It takes much more force, much more energy for me to push the ball up the hill than for me to allow the ball to roll down. So that is the biggest difference. There are 2 examples we're going to talk about when it comes to active transport. The first being the sodium-potassium pump. And the reason why this is so important is because this is what allows movement. This is what allows our muscles to actually move, and the communication between our nervous system and our muscles is due to the sodium-potassium pump. So really, really important functions here. And then again, the second example being vesicle transport, which I will give you more examples in class. Now, I want you to understand is like on this particular slide, you'll see it looks like 4 examples, but vesicle transport can be broken down even further. So endocytosis and exocytosis are types of vesicle transport. Just a little more detail in regards to both active and passive transport. The reason why they're so important is because they help maintain homeostasis. They help create a balance in the body. Without this balance, we cannot bring things in and out of the cell in a efficient way, and this is what can cause organisms to die. If you drink salt water, you have too much salt in your body, so you can't regulate that, and then that's a problem for your body on the whole. I've realized I've said a lot in this video, so if you have any questions, please make sure to ask me on Edpuzzle, ask me in class. We will probably spend a couple of days on these notes. We're not just going to talk about it and skip on. We will spend quite a bit of time over this particular unit before we can even test or anything like that. Thanks.